We're going to dive into the story of the Charkhi-Dadri collision, which is, to this day, the world's deadliest mid-air disaster. It is an absolutely tragic story for sure, but it has a crucial legacy. It completely changed air travel, making the skies that you and I fly in today so much safer. So let's get into it.
So just think about this for a second. Right now, as you're watching this, there are probably up to 25,000 airplanes crisscrossing the globe. That is an incredible number. A whole city's worth of people in metal tubes flying miles above our heads. It's like this massive, perfectly timed ballet.
And that really begs the question, right? With all that traffic up there, how on earth do they avoid disaster? How does this invisible system just work so flawlessly day in and day out? Well, the thing is, usually it does. But to understand how it all works, we have to look at what happened on the one terrible day that it failed.
Okay, so how is all that traffic managed? The best way to think about it is not as some wide-open sky, but as a complex network of highways in the sky. These are the invisible systems that take what could be total chaos and turn it into a finely tuned operation.
It really is like a highway system up there. They're called airways, and they are these very specific, predefined routes that planes have to follow, just like cars on an interstate. It's what stops it from being a total free-for-all and creates order in the skies.
And just like our highways, these airways have rules of the road. You've got air traffic controllers, or ATC, who act like the traffic cops. But maybe the most crucial rule is about separation. Generally speaking, if you're flying east, you'll be at an odd altitude, like 35,000 feet. If you're heading west, you'll be at an even one, like 36,000 feet. This simple rule automatically creates a vertical buffer of at least 1,000 feet between planes going in opposite directions. It's one of the most fundamental principles of aviation safety.
But on the evening of November 12, 1996, over a small village in India called Charkhi-Dadri, this whole system broke down, with absolutely catastrophic consequences. So let's take a look at the two aircraft at the heart of this story.
On one side, you have Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907. It's an Ilyushin cargo plane on approach to Delhi, carrying a group of merchants. And on the other, there's Saudia Flight 763, a massive Boeing 747 jumbo jet which had just taken off from that same airport. It was filled with Indian laborers heading to Saudi Arabia for work. Two totally different flights, from different places, going to different places, but unknowingly, they were put on a direct collision course.
And here's the critical detail. Both planes were using the exact same airway, a route called Delhi Star. One was coming in, the other was heading out, and the person responsible for keeping them safely apart was a single air traffic controller, a man named VK Datta. You can only imagine the pressure on that one controller. For these two planes, the vast open sky was about to become terrifyingly, fatally small. Let's walk through the final, harrowing minutes that led to the disaster. So, here's the critical sequence. The Saudi flight climbing out of Delhi was told to climb to 14,000 feet. The Kazakh flight descending to land was told to go to 15,000 feet. Now, that should have provided that standard 1,000-foot vertical separation. It was a totally routine procedure, but it was one that left absolutely no room for error.
And here is where a huge human factor comes into play. The Kazakh flight crew didn't speak English, which is the international language of aviation, so they had to rely on a radio operator to translate every single instruction from English into Russian. In a situation where every single second counts, this built-in delay was basically a ticking time bomb.
So at 6:39 p.m., right after the Kazakh crew reported they were at 15,000 feet, VK Datta issued this final, urgent warning. He was telling them there was a Boeing 747 directly in front of them, just 10 miles away, flying at 14,000 feet. He was effectively saying, look out your window, you are about to pass each other.
But that message, it wasn't fully understood. The Kazakh radio operator actually asked for clarification. By the time the controller repeated the warning, it was just too late. Less than a minute later, the radio went silent for both planes. And then a new voice came over the frequency. It was a U.S. Air Force pilot flying nearby. He reported seeing a massive explosion, a fireball lighting up the evening sky.
The two planes had collided. The left wing of the Kazakh plane just sliced through the left wing of the 747. Both these massive aircraft spiraled out of control, disintegrated, and crashed into the fields below. So now we have to move from the story to the investigation.
So how could this happen? I mean, you have an air traffic controller guiding them, you have a 1,000-foot altitude separation assigned. A collision like this should have been impossible. What went so horribly wrong? Well, the investigation revealed it wasn't one single failure. It was a catastrophic chain of them. The flight recorder from the Kazakh plane, it showed they hadn't held their altitude at 15,000 feet like they were supposed to. They had kept descending right into the path of the Saudi jet. That language barrier caused a fatal delay in understanding that final warning. And the controller, well, he had used the minimum separation of 1,000 feet, which was allowed, but it left zero margin for error. And maybe most critically, his radar screen in Delhi only showed the plane's positions on a map, not their altitudes. He had to rely completely on what the pilots told him, totally unaware the Kazakh plane was dangerously below its assigned height. And the human cost of this chain of failures was just absolute. All 312 people on the Saudi flight and all 37 on the Kazakhstan flight were killed. That's a total of 349 people. There were no survivors. It is still the deadliest mid-air collision in the history of aviation.
But out of this unimaginable tragedy, something important did emerge. A legacy that has, without a doubt, saved countless lives. The aviation world was forced to look in the mirror, confront its weaknesses, and build a stronger, safer system for all of us.
This disaster was a brutal wake-up call. It wasn't just some local issue in India. It exposed vulnerabilities that existed in the entire global aviation system. In response, regulators all over the world implemented sweeping changes that are now just standard practice. So, the investigation led to 3 key changes that we now see worldwide. First, new technology became mandatory on all commercial planes. Second, that language barrier was dealt with through much stricter proficiency rules. And third, that technology gap for air traffic controllers was closed. But let's focus on the most significant of these.
This is TCAS, the Traffic Collision Avoidance System. It's basically an automated system inside the cockpit that acts as a final line of defense. It actually talks to other TCAS-equipped planes, detects a collision risk, and then issues direct commands to the pilots. It'll literally shout, "Climb, climb," or "Descend, descend," to avoid a crash. And it does this completely independent of air traffic control. If this system had been on those planes back in 1996, this disaster would have been averted.
The skies are so much safer today because of the painful, terrible lessons learned over Charkhi Dadri. It's a powerful reminder of these complex, often invisible systems that we all rely on every single day, and the devastating consequences when they fail. And it kind of leaves you wondering, what other hidden networks are quietly keeping our world in motion right at this very moment?